The John Deere salesman was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. I kept my head down, tightening the chains around the rusted red tractor on my flatbed trailer, pretending I couldn't hear him. "That's what your grandpa left you?" He wheezed between laughs. "Kid, I got payment plans that'll put you in a real tractor. Something from this century." But here's what that smug salesman didn't know. What nobody knew. That piece of scrap metal was about to change everything. My name's Tom Brennan, and 3 weeks ago, my grandfather died. At the will reading, my cousins got the 400-acre farm. My aunt got the new John Deere equipment. My uncle got the livestock. And me, I got one single item. A beat-up 1952 Farmall tractor covered in 30 years of dust. My cousin Derek actually laughed in my face. "Enjoy your scrap metal, Tom," he sneered. "Maybe sell it for parts and buy yourself a nice dinner." Everyone thought Grandpa was insulting me. I'd left the farm 12 years ago for Chicago, worked in commercial real estate, barely visited twice a year. Of course they thought I didn't deserve anything real. Of course they thought the old man was making a joke out of me. But here's the thing. They'd all forgotten something I remembered. When I was 8 years old, Grandpa took me to his oldest barn on a summer evening. He pulled a dusty tarp off that same red Farmall, put his weathered hand on my shoulder, and said 5 words that would haunt me for decades. "This tractor is special, Tom." I asked him why. What made it different? He just smiled that knowing smile and said, "You'll know when the time comes, son." 26 years later, standing in that lawyer's office while my family mocked me, those words came flooding back. What did he mean? What was I supposed to know? I loaded that tractor onto my trailer and drove it to my garage in Springfield. The first shock hit me immediately. I expected the engine to be completely seized after sitting unused for years. But when I turned the key, it fired right up after just a few tries. The carburetor was clean. The oil looked recent. Someone had been maintaining this machine in secret. That's when the questions started piling up. Why would Grandpa maintain a tractor he never used? Why leave it specifically to me? Why did he call it special all those years ago? I started digging through his old papers, birth certificates, tax records, property deeds going back to the 1920s. Then I found it, a black and white photograph from 1952. A young Raymond Brennan, maybe 30 years old, standing next to a brand new Farmall Super M. On the back, in his handwriting, "First tractor I ever bought with my own money, paid cash, never forget this day, June 15th, 1952. My heart started racing. I grabbed a flashlight and ran to my garage. I found the serial number plate on my tractor and compared it to the photo. They matched, exactly. This wasn't just any old Farmall. This was Grandpa's very first tractor, the one he'd saved 3 jobs worth of money to buy. But that still didn't explain why it was special. Why keep it running but never use it? Why hide it in the back of the barn? I called my buddy Frank, a guy who restores antique farm equipment. He showed up the next afternoon, walked around the tractor twice without saying a word. Then he stopped cold, got down on his hands and knees. "Tom," he said slowly, his voice shaking, "do you have any idea what you got here?" I shrugged. "A 50-year-old Farmall that Grandpa kept for sentimental reasons?" Frank pulled out a rag and started cleaning something I'd never noticed before. A small brass plate riveted near the engine block. Most of it was covered in decades of grime. As he wiped it clean, I saw the engraved text. Prototype Unit Row 3. International Harvester Experimental Division, 1951. Frank's hands were actually trembling. His face had gone completely white. "This isn't a production model," he whispered. "This is one of the original test units. International Harvester only made 5 of these before they finalized the Super M design. As far as anyone knows, the other 4 were scrapped or destroyed in testing." Wait, what was he saying? "I'm saying this might be the only prototype Super M left in existence. This thing is absolutely priceless. Museum quality. Collectors worldwide would kill to own this." I couldn't believe him. It seemed impossible. How could Grandpa have owned something this valuable and never told anyone? How could he have kept it hidden for 70 years? Frank spent 2 hours examining every inch. He showed me modifications unique to the prototype units. different transmission casting, modified governor system. Even the wheel hubs were a different design than production models. He took 100 photographs, measured everything, made detailed notes. He knew a guy at the International Harvester Museum who would lose his mind over this. But then Frank found something else, something that made the prototype discovery look like child's play. Inside the toolbox mounted on the side of the tractor was an old leather journal. Grandpa's handwriting filled every page. It wasn't just a maintenance log, it was a diary. 32 years of farming, every field plowed, every crop planted, every breakdown, every repair, every lesson learned. But the last entry, dated 3 months before he died, was different. It was addressed to me. Tom, if you're reading this, you found it. You asked questions, you dug deeper. That's why this is yours. This tractor taught me that the newest isn't always the best. The shiniest isn't always the strongest. The most expensive isn't always the most valuable. I bought this machine when everyone told me to wait for the production model. It's experimental, they said. It might fail, they warned. But I believed in it, and it never let me down. Not once in 32 years. I'm leaving it to you because you're the only one who'll understand what it represents. Not Derek, who chases every new model. Not Michelle, who measures success in acres and profits. You. Because you left the farm, but you never forgot where you came from. You work in the city, but you still call every Sunday. You chased your dreams, but you remember your roots. This tractor is my way of telling you, trust your instincts, dig deeper, ask questions. Don't accept what everyone else says something is worth. Find the value that others miss. Grandpa. I sat in my garage crying like a child, reading and rereading those words. Grandpa had planned this entire thing, every detail. He knew exactly what he was doing. That night I sat in my garage staring at the tractor, my mind spinning. Why did Grandpa give this to me instead of Derek or Michelle, who actually farmed? Then it hit me like a freight train. Derek and Michelle would have sold it immediately, probably for scrap. They would have never looked twice at it, never questioned what they had. They were too busy chasing the newest equipment, the biggest profits, the flashiest machinery. They would have thrown away a priceless piece of history without even realizing what they'd lost. Grandpa knew me, knew I asked questions, knew I dug deeper, knew I'd remember that moment in the barn when I was 8 years old. But the story was just beginning, and it was about to get much crazier. Frank connected me with his museum contact, a man named Dr. Harrison Webb, who'd spent 40 years studying international harvester prototypes. When I sent him photos, he called me within 10 minutes. "Don't touch that tractor," he said urgently. "Don't let anyone near it. I'm driving to Springfield right now." He arrived 6 hours later with 2 other specialists. They examined the Farmall for 3 straight days. On day 3, Dr. Webb found something that changed everything again. Hidden inside the engine compartment, behind a panel that looked like part of the original design, was a small metal box, sealed, untouched for decades. Dr. Webb carefully removed it, hands shaking. Inside were documents, engineering blueprints, handwritten notes from the original International Harvester design team, and a letter. The letter was from the chief engineer who designed the Super M prototype. It was dated 1952 and addressed to whoever finds this. The engineer explained that prototype Unit 003 was special because it contained experimental modifications that were too expensive for mass production. A revolutionary fuel injection system, an advanced hydraulic design, innovations that were decades ahead of their time. But here's the twist that made my jaw drop. The engineer wrote that he'd intentionally sold the specific prototype to a young farmer named Raymond Brennan because he believed it deserved to be used, not scrapped. He wanted one of these prototypes to survive, to prove what they created, to show that sometimes the best engineering isn't about what's profitable, it's about what's possible. Grandpa had known exactly what he had, the entire time. Dr. Webb looked at me with tears in his eyes. This tractor is American agricultural history. This belongs in the Smithsonian. But then came the question that changed my entire life. What do you want to do with it? I had 3 choices. Keep it, donate it to a museum, or sell it at auction. Keeping it meant storing an irreplaceable piece of history in my garage forever. Donating it meant Grandpa's legacy would be preserved, but I'd get nothing. Selling it meant potentially millions of dollars, but losing the tractor forever. I spent 2 weeks thinking, walking past Grandpa's old farm, which my cousins had already sold to developers. Watching construction crews stake out where cookie-cutter houses would replace cornfields. Remembering Sunday phone calls where Grandpa talked about what endures, what lasts, what you can count on when everything else fails. Then I made my decision. I'd sell it at auction, but with conditions. The auction house was Sotheby's. They'd handled famous collections before, but never a tractor. When they announced the sale, the agricultural world exploded. Collectors from 6 continents registered to bid. Museums put together funding packages. Private buyers lined up. The auction was scheduled for a Saturday in April at Sotheby's Chicago headquarters. The day before, I got a call from Derek, my cousin, the one who'd laughed at me in the lawyer's office, the one who'd called the Farmall scrap metal. He'd heard about the auction through the farming grapevine. Someone sent him the news article. I guess the old man knew what he was doing after all, he said quietly. But then he told me something that broke my heart. He was drowning in debt. The new John Deere equipment was crushing him. Corn prices had dropped. He was thinking about selling the land Grandpa had left him just to stay afloat. You sound just like Grandpa now, he said, when I suggested using older paid-for equipment. You know that? Maybe that's not such a bad thing, I told him. The auction began at 10 a.m. The room was packed, museum directors, private collectors, agricultural historians, journalists, TV cameras. The auctioneer started the bidding at $500,000. Within seconds, it hit $1 million, then $2 million, then $3 million. But here's what I didn't expect. Sitting in the front row was my cousin Derek. He'd driven all the way from Illinois. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement. The bidding continued. $4 million, $5 million, $6 million. Each jump made my heart race faster. This was really happening. Grandpa's tractor, the one Derek had mocked as scrap metal, was about to sell for more than their entire 400-acre farm was worth. At $7 million, I noticed Derek shift in his seat. He looked uncomfortable, almost sick. I realized something in that moment. He finally understood. He finally got it. The old man hadn't been senile or cruel or making a joke. He'd been making a point. The bidding slowed around $8 million. 2 buyers remained, the Smithsonian and a private collector from Japan. Back and forth they went. $8, $5 million, $9 million, $9, $5 million. At $10 million, the Japanese collector hesitated. The Smithsonian's representative, Dr. Webb himself, raised his paddle. 10 arm, $5 million. Silence. The Japanese collector lowered his paddle. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Going once. Then something unexpected happened. A third paddle went up. A man in the back I hadn't noticed before. 11 million, Dr. Webb countered. 11 and a half. The mystery bidder, 12 million. The Smithsonian couldn't go higher. Their funding was tapped out. The auctioneer looked around the room. No other paddles moved. 12 million going once? Going twice. Sold to bidder number 47 for $12 million. But wait, there was a buyer's premium? Final sale price, $12, $3 million. For a tractor my grandfather bought for a few $1,000s in 1952, the mystery bidder revealed himself after the sale. His name was Robert Chen, a tech billionaire who'd grown up on a farm in Taiwan. He'd built his fortune in Silicon Valley, but never forgot his agricultural roots. And here's what he did that brought me to tears. He immediately donated the tractor to the Smithsonian, created an endowment to maintain it forever, set up a scholarship fund in Raymond Brennan's name for young farmers studying agricultural engineering, and he gave me a check for the full $12. $3 million, because as he said, your grandfather's legacy isn't just the tractor, it's the lesson. 3 months later, I ran into that John Deere salesman at a farm supply store. He saw me and froze. I heard about the tractor, he said quietly, looking at his boots. About what it sold for. I'm sorry I laughed at you that day. I shook my head. You didn't know what it was. Hell, neither did I at the time. He looked up at me. Your grandpa used to come into the dealership sometimes. Never bought anything new. Always said the old stuff was built better. I thought he was just being cheap. Just a stubborn old farmer who didn't want to spend money. He wasn't cheap, I told him. He was smart. He understood value in a way most people don't. The money changed my life in practical ways. Paid off debts, set up college funds, gave me freedom to start my own business. But that wasn't the real inheritance. The real inheritance was the lesson Grandpa spent his entire life trying to teach me. Value isn't about the price tag. It's about what endures, what lasts, what you can count on when everything else fails. He'd given me that tractor knowing I'd dig deeper, knowing I'd ask questions, knowing I'd eventually understand. The Smithsonian put the Super M on permanent display in their agricultural history wing. They spent 6 months restoring it to exactly how it looked in 1952, while preserving all the wear from 30 years of farm use. They wanted people to see both the innovation and the endurance. The plaque reads, Farmall Super M Prototype Unit 003, one of 5 experimental units produced by International Harvester in 1951, owned and operated by Raymond Brennan from 1952 to 1984. This tractor represents American agricultural innovation and the farmers who believed in untested technology when no one else would. It plowed the same Illinois farmland for 32 consecutive years without a single major mechanical failure. I visit it once a year, drive to Washington, D.C., and spend an afternoon in that museum. Last time I was there, a father was explaining the exhibit to his young son, maybe 7 or 8 years old. The same age I was when Grandpa first showed me that tractor. The kid looked up and asked, "Was he rich?" The father smiled and shook his head. "No, son, he was smart. There's a difference. Being rich is about how much money you have. Being smart is about how you use what you've got." I almost introduced myself, almost told him I was Raymond Brennan's grandson. But I decided to just listen instead, to let Grandpa's story speak for itself. As I walked around the exhibit one more time, I saw a photograph I hadn't seen before. Grandpa's an older man, maybe 70, sitting on the Super M in front of his barn. Not posing, not even looking at the camera. Just sitting there with one hand on the wheel, looking at his fields the way he must have done 1,000 times. That's the image I carry now. Not the auction, not the money. Just Grandpa on his tractor, content with what he'd built and how he'd built it. And every time I'm there, I hear his voice as clear as if he was standing next to me. The same words from that summer evening when I was 8 years old. "This tractor is special, Tom. Don't you ever forget that." I never will, Grandpa. I promise you, I never will. The lesson applies to everything. Your relationships, your career, your dreams. Don't chase what's newest and shiniest. Chase what's real, what endures, what you can count on when the world tells you you're wrong. Sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones everyone else overlooks. Sometimes the wisest investments are the ones that don't make sense on paper. Sometimes the best inheritance isn't money, it's wisdom. My cousin Derek called me last month. He'd downsized, sold some land but kept the core farm, bought older, paid for equipment. He's struggling less now, sleeping better. "I'm finally understanding what Grandpa was trying to teach us," he said. Better late than never. The John Deere salesman. He left the dealership, started his own repair business, fixing older equipment. "Helping farmers like your grandfather," he told me when I ran into him at a diner. "The ones who understand that newer isn't always better." The world keeps spinning. People keep chasing the next big thing. The newest model, the latest upgrade, the shiniest toy. And they keep missing what's right in front of them. But not me, not anymore. Here's something else I never told anyone until now. Remember those Sunday evening phone calls with Grandpa? The ones I mentioned earlier? There was one conversation I had with him about 6 months before he died that I didn't fully understand at the time. He asked me out of nowhere, "Tom, if I left you something that didn't make sense, would you trust that I had my reasons?" I laughed it off. Told him he was being morbid. "I'm serious," he insisted. "Would you dig deeper? Would you ask questions? Or would you just accept what everyone else tells you it's worth?" I promised him I would. "I'd trust you, Grandpa. I'd figure it out. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Good, that's all I needed to hear." That conversation haunted me after the will reading, when Derek laughed, when everyone looked at me with pity, when that John Deere salesman mocked me. I kept hearing Grandpa's voice. "Would you dig deeper?" And I did. Thank God I did. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. About a year after the auction, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a letter from a woman named Margaret Chen, Robert Chen's mother, the tech billionaire who'd bought the tractor. She explained that her son hadn't told me the full story. Robert's father had worked on the International Harvester Assembly Line in the 1950s. He'd helped build the original Super M prototypes. He'd told young Robert stories about Prototype Unit 03, about how it went to a farmer who truly believed in it. Robert had been searching for that tractor for 20 years. When it appeared at auction, he knew he had to bring it home, had to honor his father's memory, had to complete the circle. But there's more. Margaret included something else in that package, a small metal tin. Inside was a handwritten note from Robert Chen's father, dated 1952, addressed to the farmer who believed. It was a thank you letter to my grandfather for taking a chance on experimental technology when no one else would, for proving that innovation wasn't just about profit, it was about progress. Grandpa had never mentioned any of this, never told anyone about the letter, never bragged about being part of history. He just quietly did his work, maintained that tractor, kept it running, preserved it for someone who would understand, and he chose me to be that someone. Because Grandpa taught me the most valuable lesson anyone ever could. True value isn't determined by what something costs, it's determined by what it means, what it represents, what it teaches you about yourself and the world. That $12, $3 million tractor was never about the money. It was about recognizing worth when everyone else sees worthless, about asking questions when everyone else accepts answers, about digging deeper when everyone else stops at the surface. It was about remembering that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as garbage. Sometimes the wisest voices are the quietest. Sometimes the most valuable lessons take decades to understand. And sometimes, just sometimes, the crazy old farmer who refuses to upgrade knows exactly what he's doing. If you enjoyed this story and learned something about recognizing true value in a world obsessed with the newest and shiniest, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Drop a comment below telling me about a time someone in your life taught you a lesson you didn't understand until years later. Let's honor the Raymond Brennans of the world, the quiet teachers who leave wisdom disguised as inheritance. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. See you in the next one.